Hello, I'm Nicolette Lazarus, founder and chief connection officer at Womanship. And this is our space to meet the humans behind the professional titles, the story, the lived moments, the quiet turning points that shape the work that they bring to this world to help women thrive. So, welcome to this Behind the Bio. And today I'm joined by Dr. I hope I got that right, who some of you may remember from the Connected Health Weekend. Dr. Rianne is a medical doctor who blends Western medicine with a gentle intelligence of the nervous system, cyclical living, and the rhythm of nature at her practice, Dr. Rianne. Thank you for joining me. I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you, Nicolette. Thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to talk with you today. I'm really looking forward to our upcoming hour.
So, when we spoke yesterday, you shared a Dutch saying that stayed with me, and I think it was every house has a cross.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
And the story behind that is, I guess, no matter how strong someone looks from the outside, everybody has their limits and their breaking points. And I really love that. And it feels like the perfect way into this conversation because
mm,
I guess behind the bio was really about these human thresholds and connections and the moments that changed us and the reasons behind the work that you actually do.
yeah.
So I am a fan of connections, as everybody probably knows by now. And I'm going to start with the two questions I always ask. And the first one is, how do you remember us first meeting?
So, for anyone who's watching, I first of all want to say that I had a little surgery on my lip. So, if I'm laughing or talking a little bit different than you thought I would, then you understand why it is because they're little stitches. But all fine. So, Nicolette, the first time we met is, and the first picture I have from you in real life is you like running around at the Womanship at the conference. So it was like because I knew how you were looking, but then in the main stage, you were just like running around and meeting people, and I was like, all right, this is the power woman.
I don't know whether it's a power woman or just was frantic to try and make sure that everything went well.
Yeah, but you were in the same time also able to really connect on a personal level in the moment you got the chance to. So after I did my workshop, I remember you coming into the room and really taking your time to have a chat. And I mean, there were many workshops, there were many workshop givers, space holders, and you were still able to, if you had the chance, to get this personal connection with someone, which I really appreciated.
We had so much amazing feedback to your workshop. Thank you so much for being there. We really appreciate it. How did you experience the event?
Yes, it was such a beautiful collaboration between science and yeah, holistic health, although that's actually not a good combination because holistic health can be science as well. You might want to say science and spirituality or alpha and beta. It was just really, really nice to have this really deep digging down lectures about hormones and genetics. And on the other hand, having talks and lectures again about how to arrange your life in a cyclical way. So I really, really liked that abundance.
It was brilliant to have you there. Today, we're going to find out a little bit more about you. And again, it's on this connection theme. I know that in your practice that you enjoy listening to women's stories because it really helps you understand how you can help them and how they've arrived at where they are today. So today we get to do that with you.
Mm.
With my initial question that I love to ask everybody, what's made you the woman that you are today?
Mm. Yes. Wow. It's such a big, big question. I guess the first word that comes up is curiosity. As long as I can remember, I've been very curious and kind of like exploring how things work. I do remember being a little girl and we had a cat at home, and the cat was catching mouses, as cats do. And in a certain point, there was a mouse. Unfortunately, it wasn't alive anymore. And me and my little boyfriend back then, we tried to measure the speed the mouse has been running before it was dying. And we made our own inventory, how that would work. Certain cables I found in the garage of my dad, like these kind of things. I was just like wondered, like what happened with this mouse before it was laying here. And it's a very small example, but that is, I think, reflecting many paths in my life. How I always kind of like curious how things work. And time again, I see that one perspective is just one perspective. In medicine, I've been taught to follow guidelines, and I think they are really, really helpful. But as we work with humans, we will find that certain perspectives won't work that well for one person, where they will for the other. And that's my passion, to honestly look from a holistic perspective. So the way how I build my life, I think really reflects also what comes back in the way how I work as a doctor. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're going to dig into more about what you do later on. But now,
Mhm.
going back to childhood, tell me about how you grew up, what your childhood was like based on this um, curious nature that you had.
Yeah, yes. Good that you bring me back to that time in my life. So I grew up in a village in the east of the Netherlands, and for the people who know the Netherlands, like the east and also the south and the north are rather quiet areas. And that was the case for me as well. And it was very small. My life until 18 years old was small. The school I was in was just like 5 minutes walk away from the house I was living. All my friends were close by. We were in the fields a lot. Like I was, yeah. The first 9 years of my life, you would think I was more like a boy. I also had short hair. People would think I was in the wrong toilets when I would go to the woman toilet, like that level of boyish look. And I also was really fond of everything wild, like being outside and getting dirty and making your own tree houses. I had one Barbie and I was cutting the hair, and that was it. Whereas my sister, she had plenty and was playing with them for ages in the corner of a room. I was mostly outside thinking about our own games. Whereas my sister was playing Monopoly, we were thinking what we could do with the money, like letting go of the game and making an own game of it. That was something I think of when I think back of my childhood. And my two sisters were 4 and 5 years older, and I wasn't really playing with them a lot. So when I think back of those times, I've been playing a lot with myself and with friends, but also a lot with myself, just finding my way, never bored. I had a friend who was often bored. I was like, how can you be bored? Like, how is that possible in life? There's always something you can explore. Yeah.
And so, what about your parents?
Mm, My dad, he has been taught to be an how you call it, someone who's repairing cars.
Mhm, mhm.
He was very handy. He is very handy still. He has a lot of insight how things work, and he ended up working as a police man. Also, still in a very technical part of the police. And my mother, she was a teacher. So she didn't work until I arrived in like the kindergarten. She went with me and started to teach at the kindergarten, and later on she started to teach in the primary school I was in. But I don't remember her teaching me. But she's still really, really good with kids. And yeah, it was a very practical family. They were mostly busy. If I would look for my dad, I would have to look in a garage, in a garden, or he was at work. There was not so much time of sitting on the couch. My mother is also still, she's very active and always helping people and repairing stuff and making her own clothes. I had to learn myself though to calm down and to sit still, and to feel. That was not something that was a lot of that was very present, but it was from the practical perspective, it was a really nice place to grow up.
But
Yeah.
it sounds like, I think most families of that time, you weren't necessarily in touch with who you were as a person back then. That wasn't something that came through the family. Is that
No.
correct?
Yeah. It's also what we do say about this part of the country, they're more closed. As my father, he also grew up and still living in the village where he was born. Um, and yes, it wasn't present in their families, and so it wasn't present in our family. This was hard for me later in life. If you do struggle with things, but you didn't learn the language. Um, but I think until the age of 9 or 10, I don't remember that it was a problem for me. Only in puberty, when more feelings yeah, were getting present, and you kind of needed to do something with it, but you never saw or talked about. You never saw someone doing it in your close surroundings, or no one was really talking about. Yeah.
So how did sort of puberty develop and you decide to study to become a doctor?
So I think what was important also, when I was 9, I decided I wasn't a boy. I was never busy with the whole gender topic, but I was, I just asked my mom if I could get girls' clothes, and I was asking if I was saying like I want to grow my hair. There was really an energetic break in myself, also in the connection with my dad, because I did quite some things with him when he was at home, or I went with him to his job as an what he did in the weekends. And from that point, I decided I didn't want that anymore. And looking back, that was a very intuitive moment. What I did there. It was not so easy for the relationship between me and my dad because I took a bit of distance as a kid. Um, and for me, getting a girl was in puberty was hard. I had difficulties with my body, how it changed. It led me choosing for behavior like eating very little and doing sports a lot. So from the outside, it was looking that I was a very healthy and enthusiastic, energetic girl, as I always would have been, you know. But on the inside, that was a little bit of a mask, going into this really healthy behavior, which I found very, very interesting. But it was also a mask to kind of control the feelings I had difficulty with. So you could say it was anorexia, which turned more into bulimia. It took a very long time until the end of my studies, when I was 26 years old. But from this outside, but it was also on the inside. It was on the inside, I was also very passionate about healthy living. The step into medicine was not that big, although, as I already explained, I had so many interests that choosing the study was still hard because I was like, I can also become an architect, or I can do this or that. And that on the last day before you could sign up, my teacher from physics, he talked with me and he was like, he was an old guy and I really liked him. And he was like, Rian, why don't you choose medicine? You can go abroad, you can become a researcher, you can work with human, you learn about biology. And I was like, that's a cool idea. Let's do that. So it did kind of resonate with my interests, but it wasn't that I wanted to be a medical doctor for ages. It was more like I think it kind of like covers all my interests, or at least I can do a lot with it. Mm.
Amazing the people that we meet along the way who have an influence on us and help give us that little spark. It's
Yes.
interesting to think if, he hadn't given you that insight into what medicine could do, what you would have
Mhm.
chosen. I think those turning points are fascinating.
Yeah.
But also what you were talking about in terms of the eating disorders,
Mhm.
um, that's really interesting to look back and say, yes, on the outside you were healthy, but on the inside you were struggling with something. How do you explain that now, looking back on it from your experience as a doctor? Because I think probably this is something that a lot of people struggle with, their identity, their image, who they are, maybe
Mhm.
through not talking, and I think a lot of people have that, not being able to understand who they are. So,
Yeah.
how do you look back on that period?
Yeah, so, right now I'm now 33, and I don't struggle with it anymore. But, I do see different stages, in it, because it's different behaviors, like I already mentioned, like more anorexia and then later on more bulimia, but also different stages of emotional, growth or emotional, adulthood, maybe you can say, because that was for me, the most important trigger, I guess. The food, the activities, your sports you can control. It gives you a sensation of control, of autonomy, which when I look back, I didn't have on other levels, which gave me a feeling of discomfort, of restlessness, and that got so intense that, I really, really needed something to balance out this restlessness. And it was really compulsive that you like I had to run on the streets every evening before I would go to bed, or I had to do certain levels of running during the day, during the week. It didn't matter if I would come late for half an hour or 1.5 hours somewhere. I had to do it first, and it was really weaving into my social events, uh, that it really is becoming a second life.
Right.
And it's very lonely because you do it all behind a mask, and also the when you got into bulimia, where for the people who don't know it with anorexia, it's eating very little and doing sports a lot. Whereas in bulimia, you also have eating attacks, and you have to compensate them with either doing sports or maybe throwing up, more or less, or maybe using medication to. It's a very simple definition like this, but just to have a little bit of difference for the one who are listening. In my case, from the moment I start to throw up, I was realizing, oh wait, and this was only when I was 21. From that point, although I was studying medicine, I didn't realize what was really happening. It was just leading me. From the moment I started to throw up, I realized, wow. And I was Googling it, and I started to cry because I was like, this is me. And this is me already, like, since I'm 13. And I got so sad, but it was really a dissociation, I guess. Um, yeah, and very intense physical sensations towards this compulsive behavior you have to do of yourself. Or if you did something that was not fitting in this schedule, then you also got really intense physical sensation of disgust or yeah, rejection of yourself. Um, so it's a multi-layered situation. Yeah.
It's really interesting how sometimes it's no big cause that leads down this path. It's not as if there was any one big trauma that led to this for you. And I think that's really important for women to know who are battling with various different illnesses, ailments, things like anorexia or bulimia. It doesn't have to have a traumatic start. It can just be something that develops into your life.
Yeah. Yes, and the high achievers, the one who are also able to organize themselves really, really well, or they can push themselves beyond borders. They can be really prone for these kind of things because you have to push yourself beyond borders. Uh, yeah, it is really something that can go on a sliding scale. It's not something that happens from one day or the other, and you can mask it very well with a lot of excuses. Yeah.
It makes me, even more worried about the generation who are growing up now and looking at what they think they should be like and wanting to be able
Mm.
to control that. I'm wondering whether, anorexia and bulimia are actually on the increase because people are trying to become part of this world that seems so controlled and is actually so fake.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly, it's new for me to share this on a live stream like this. It's also not that I've been using it as a part of my position or that I work with it a lot. So actually, I'm not so aware of the current numbers or anything. I think what is for me interesting is how we communicate at least with our important others, and if we have children, how what kind of influence we have on them, how the behaviors are on the eating table, how we look to our bodies, how we embody our body. There's so much, I think, also in our language we can do with this in our circle we are living in, except like not even talking yet about the whole medical structure or the whole society. But I think in our own power, in the here and now, I think there is beautiful things you can do to, yeah, at least talk about it, talk about food and not only about, oh, she just likes sports.
Yes. Really important. So, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that it's probably not easy to look back and think what's changed in your life, but also your life has changed for the better, the fact that you have moved forward
Yeah.
from that. So, how did you move forward, and how did that run alongside you becoming a doctor?
Like I already mentioned, I've been gone through different stages, and that's why I also feel really comfortable talking about it. Although I don't use it in my marketing or something, but for now it's totally fine. This moment of 21 years old I just mentioned has been a very important moment. I also decided to quit medicine. I was studying in Belgium, which is quite different than the Netherlands. I didn't got a place in the Netherlands, although my average on high school was quite good, but I didn't got through the selection. But I did got through the selection in Belgium. You have to do a test, and all of a sudden I passed it, although only like 10% of the Dutch people will pass the test. And all of a sudden I was in Belgium, and after 3 years of studying medicine, I had to say, like, hey, I'm actually not happy. I passed all my exams, but I'm not happy. The eating problems were also on the rise. And on that point, I wanted to study abroad, but it didn't work out. So I decided, okay, let's just quit, which was a really nice year. Also, a year with a lot of questions. I was again curious a lot. I was in Spain for a while and really exploring all different ways of living, of health, of sustainable health. I ended up also, I was already practicing yoga, but doing it more and more. And then I ended up in a dance class, which was a contact improvisation dance. And as you can imagine, someone who has struggled with food and their body and her body, like touch and connection is not so easy, which was the case for me. And I ended up in this dance class where they would do improvisation of contact. So I was there, and there was a part of me was really like, no, someone is gonna touch me, like, no, 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 no. But I came home and I was like, I don't know what this was. People were like having contact, a lot, physical contact. And I didn't. But I did feel like I think I have to go back. It was a weekly class. I was totally like blue going there. And this is a really, really important breaking point because through this type of dance, I learned again to feel my body. I've been crying a lot, like lots of hours on the dance floor, and it was so freeing for me because I could express my emotions without talking about it because I didn't know how to talk, like I already mentioned. But all of a sudden I could feel them, and after that hour I felt happy again. So I didn't know what magic was going on, but I learned to feel. I learned to connect with my body, or at least I started to learn to feel. I think that's a lifelong journey. I started to uh, be in touch with my body, doing the first steps, and also be in touch with my body together with someone else. Because till that point, that was really, really difficult for me. Also in romantic relationships. And this dance has been of so big importance into my life, and in the end also in the way how I practice my current career. But that's another story. That was a really important turning point, and I decided to continue medicine. But I made the promise with myself that I would do as much as possible things outside the university. So I was passing all my exams, but I was like, all right. And I was doing my first massage course and doing another dance courses, all to kind of like let my body experience what for me sustainable health could be. So that was the beginning of a really beautiful exploration.
I think it's so lovely to hear how those things started to come together to put you into contact with yourself. And I think it's something that so many of us miss. And it's almost that exploration to see what feels good for you. So, I talk a lot about holistic health and, connected health. And actually my self-care is really pretty poor. But
Mm.
I've done my first sound healing session. I've done my
Mm.
breathwork session. And now I'm so enthusiastic about these things for women to explore, just to explore the modalities that are there to help them reach a new space, to get more contact. So you having that at such an early age to explore is amazing.
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
fact that it helps you study to become, well, to continue your studies as a doctor.
Yeah, it was in that time quite a parallel life. It was my life at university, and outside university, like really like my close friends, I didn't talk so much about it because also for me, I was like, "What's all this?" Because sometimes I ended up in really really nice places, but sometimes I ended also up in places where I'm like, it's kind of weird, but you know, it was the curiosity that was kind of like helping me out. In Belgium, you have 2 years of internship out of 7. Back then, now it's 6 years study, but then it was still 7. And of these 2 years, I managed to do 1 year of internships in an holistic hospital in Germany. I did do like one of my 5 theoretical years also in Germany, and that's how I ended up in this holistic hospital. It's from the philosophy and anthroposophy from a lot of people who have really good experience with it. Maybe some people also have other opinions about it. For me, the most important thing is that I all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, didn't feel alone anymore in medicine. It's not that I 100% agree with the approach, but just to be around people who were like thinking and feeling similar things as I was doing, and I all of a sudden didn't have to hold back anymore. Even like the smallest things, like people who were saying like, "Hey, can we open the window? The air quality is not so nice." It was like, "Oh God, I always feel like that in the hospital," you know? Like it's super, super small things, also bigger examples. But this was a moment I realized, all right, I think I'm on a good spot to kind of explore my career a little bit further. And it was really, really nice to yeah, meet like-minded, like heart people.
It's always about finding your tribe. Because you're never alone, I realize, in the way that we think or feel, especially as a woman, there's always somebody else who thinks or feels that way. So finding that tribe who had that curiosity about the science, but also with other modalities is really,
Mm.
really interesting. So how did you find combining sort of the science side with the more, I guess, cyclical, holistic world? How did that come together for you?
So these two places I was in Germany were really at the start point, and I later on also was working at a GP who was also a regular GP in Belgium, but also was educated in anthroposophy and other holistic approaches. So there it was also a really beautiful place to explore, and I continued on the side doing things, other holistic studies. I've done fascia therapy, which is a body-oriented approach that thinks really, really holistic, but I also did integrative medicine, and so I was doing it all the time in the same moment, working in science, but on the other hand, exploring in my weekends other stuff. But it was since I started to work in Dutch, we have the consultatiebureau. It's the place where you go with your little child. And first, I was working in a regular place. You do the checkups, you talk with the parents, and I really liked it because it was preventive. And I was like, I really love to work. If you wonder how can we stay in a sustainable way healthy, then it's really important to work with someone when he's not yet on the end stage of an illness, which was happening a lot when I was in a hospital. And because of my background, I ended up also in een holistic consultatiebureau. And that was the first place I owned. Let's say it like this, I could do what I wanted. First of all, this was amazing to just like, wow, I can develop myself. I don't have to put myself in a certain picture, which I had done. Actually, I only then I realized how much I put myself in a certain picture I thought I had to be. Like here, I can put my own tone of voice. And I started to dig into all the postpartum philosophies in the world, the visions, all the things that we kind of lost in the West. Although in the West, we also had our own traditions to take care of the just born mother. And they were in front of me, sitting, the just born mothers. And I was just reading the specialist letter of what they have gone through in the hospital. And I was like, you're sitting in front of me just 4 weeks ago. How come that you're like sitting here? You need support. Also, I did have so much respect for these mothers, and from that point, I started to dig. Like I was digging in cyclical living myself already, but from that point in a professional way. I forgot to mention that I only started to menstruate when I was 21 years old.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, yeah, which probably had to do a little bit with the story I just mentioned with food and exercise. And the gynecologist wanted me to start it on the contraceptive pill, and I tried for 2 months to get my hormones because that would be good for my health. But I started to feel so emotionally. I was just like all over. It's like, okay, no hormones for me. I didn't know anything about holistic health yet. It was a sporadic consultation in India with an Ayurvedic doctor who gave me a very strange dark pills and a dark fluid. And very naive as I was curious and I started taking it. And a couple of months later, I had my first period. But so my introduction in cyclical living, it hasn't been different because from the moment I had my menstruation, I didn't have contraceptives. So I had to kind of dig into the cycle myself. And when I started to work with just born mothers, I started to work with it on a professional basis. Yes.
So I'm curious, when your doctor recommended that you try the birth control pills or the hormones to stimulate your periods, did they actually know about your eating disorder, or was this a very single consultation?
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually a really good question because so I stayed very small. So in the Netherlands, when I was 16 or something, we went to the pediatrician to kind of check like, is there no genetic failure or something going on with our daughter? Which was not such a nice experience. The guy was just open. I was sending him my underwear, and he was talking to me as I was a little kid and I was in puberty, and you're very sensitive for this. And he was taking my slip and he was like, let's take a look at the booty booty. And I was just like, oh my God, didn't you read why I'm here? Anyhow, at this consultation when I was 16 or something, they realized, okay, there's genetically nothing wrong. And I made a commitment with myself, okay, when I'm 18 and I still don't have my period, I will go to the gynecologist. Then, when I was 18, I was living in Belgium. So I went there on my own without my parents or anything. They also checked other things like my pelvis and the MRI, if everything was there. So everything was there. And then we did a couple of months using the hormones and everything worked. I could menstruate. So she was happy. But to come back to your question, I didn't tell her anything about this. It was really kind of like ticking the boxes to go there and to see that nothing was wrong. And she also didn't really ask about this. And I was on my own, so I could keep my mask, you know? And what I mentioned, it was only until I was 21 that I kind of realized that something was off. I did realize, but I didn't think of it as something that was a problem. It was just how I worked. So I think I also myself, I kind of dissociated it, you know? It's
It's funny, I think a lot of people talk about going to the doctor and the limited time they have with a doctor. So actually, they're only treating the symptoms. They're not actually asking what happened around that story that gives the full picture because they don't have time often to dig into it.
mm,
And I think Louise Newson gave that amazing story when I interviewed her about being told to listen wider and what happened
mm,
when she did. And that really touched me because I think so often we're in and out of the doctor and they're not asking what the whole scenario is. And we don't feel comfortable enough, maybe safe enough to share with them everything. So it's really interesting. And what you were saying about functional medicine, about sort of that more holistic approach, I loved also because when I spoke to Diane Siepmans, she was talking about the fact that there is sickness care that's not health
mm.
care. We're very good in the Western world of taking care of the chronic things when they get really bad, but there's no actual health care to keep us well.
No, and that was also, um, for me, like I told you how I started medicine was more like, hey, this is more or less a good option, but there were no doctors in my surrounding, in my family. I didn't visit the hospital after my birth, I guess, because I was born in a hospital. But afterwards, I never was there again. So more or less the first moments I ended up in the hospital again was for my internships. Maybe I visited once a grandmom or something, but very little. And then I was in the hospital and I was feeling as like, I at that point, I took it to myself. I was like, something is wrong with me because every time I think something is important to ask, either I ask it to my supervisor and he's like, no, it's not, or my colleagues, and they were also like, you don't need to care about that, or that I was talking with that I was like, okay, maybe something is wrong with me. That's maybe yeah, a more internalizing thing instead of kind of thinking, hey, the world around me is strange. I first thought that I was wrong. And I also, yeah, considered that maybe I am not able to become a medical doctor because every time I think something is important, they say it isn't. So I'm really happy that I moved away from that place because that's not so loving towards yourself. It's really rejecting your own intuition. What you mentioned, like there's very little time and the care is more focused on, yeah, someone who's chronic sick, but all these stages beforehand, they do fascinate me, and now I can own that. But it was not always that I could own that. That this is where I stand for, and this is also what I love. I love to get to know you, and I love to kind of like make the connections because something like you mentioned in the beginning is not happen all of a sudden. Somehow we become the person who we are now, and some questions are not to be solved in this lifetime. We have also to agree with that. I've seen people in the holistic hospital, which was also really good for me to realize that they were all very on an alternative search. But the doctors also said, like, okay, if you don't take autoimmune medication now, then your lungs won't be working well in the upcoming months. And that was also really, really good to realize, okay, sometimes there, uh, and I fully agree with that, but in that point, I was very alternative in my way of looking around. And I realized, okay, but there's really place for everything. And we can do and search and feel what we can. And sometimes it is regular medicine that is needed, and we cannot solve it right now with the family system or family constellation or, you know, sometimes this can give a lot of insight, but sometimes we do need the regular medicine and to be open, like I already mentioned, for the different kind of visions and
Yeah.
be surprised because we don't know. We really don't know. Can we start from that point?
And also, what's right for me is going to be different than what's right for the next person. And it's this almost curiosity and exploration of how do I create this wellness journey that I need? And how am I given the space to do this in a way that works for me?
Yeah.
So, you worked with mothers and you started developing your interest in cyclical living. How has that progressed to what you do now?
Yeah, actually quite organically. So first it started the most with the menstrual cycle in general and then the postpartum care. And of course there is the postpartum care like warmth and massage and good food. But there are also the postpartum complications, like when that is not enough. So I got more medical into it. First it was, if I can say it like this, it was more from a holistic approach, and later on, okay, what can we also do when there's really complication or problems for the whole family? So I started to get more and more mothers coming to my practice, not so much because they were at me with the consultatiebureau. Also later on, they realized like, okay, it's really not about my kid, it's what I'm struggling with. And then you dig more and more into the hormones, the hormone balances, the physiology, and to then the step towards perimenopause care and other hormonal imbalances is very small. So I did quit at the consultatiebureau. I was working in 7 different projects. And in my path in self care, I had to choose 2 years ago to focus. And now I have my own practice and I work at another platform. And that's really, really nice to be more centered and grounded. And also to see this whole lifetime with curiosity also has been for a while very much like looking around, grasping around, and now is getting more and more into roots and settling down. And that's a really nice feeling, as if I the last years can harvest from all these whirlings. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your practice today and the type of women who come to you.
Yeah. So in my practice, it's a holistic health care practice for women. And why do I pronounce another time holistic? Because that's the way I, like you maybe can guess already from my story till so far. I really love the work. I really love to take the time. The women are 30, 35 years old and older. And they feel challenged by sometimes a very specific hormonal problem, but sometimes it's also a bit more vague. Can also be like burnout things. Many are also around perimenopause age. And I start with a long intake, for sure, 90 minutes, with a very long questionnaire that the person fills in beforehand. So, and we go through it together so she can add anything she forgot, or I can ask questions, anything we forgot. And I really love this start because from that point, I got to know her, her situation, her biography. So in Germany, I learned a lot also about, they call it Biografiearbeit, so biography work, to really like to tune in to your lifestyle, your past, your family history, and to see also certain patterns, because we all have patterns or challenges or strengths or pitfalls, and to take them with us on our journey. And we kind of divine a couple of building blocks we want to work on, and can be super medical, and we're like, all right, we're going to do the Dutch test and genetic testing, and with others we're going to work on lifestyle, and then there are others they looking more for a mind body connection, and sometimes it's a combination of both. So I didn't manage to put my work into packages because I see it's so different, and for now I'm fully okay with that, and I think that's more the signature of my practice, that yeah, that we really gonna look to what's needed for you.
I love that, and connect the dots to actually give you the right course of treatment. I think the thing with packages can sometimes be there is a formulaic way to get to the end result, and I love this sort of openness and taking in all the data to actually create this personalized plan.
Yeah.
So, what signals do sort of women most often override or ignore when it comes to
Mhm.
their health?
Oh, lovely question. What do they override? Hmm. Yeah, I think the most cliche one is, of course, when they should take rest. I think this is a challenge we all face in the West, isn't it? Like you were saying, like my self-care is maybe not so rich as I would like to. It's the values this society is living. They're far different than first of all a cyclical being should or not should, but the way a cyclical being is living is definitely different than how our society works. And any kind of more feminine values, they are not so easily, how can I say it, put value at, you know? It's really something from an inner willpower you have to choose for. To to pause is so hard in a society that constantly moves. It's easy to just continue, you know? You're in the movement anyways. Yeah.
That's so true, and I think that's why so many women especially burn out when their hormones are sort of maladjusted and they're continuing to keep going and going and going, and there's almost a guilt with taking rest. There's a guilt with
Mm,
stopping that we've come to feel.
yeah.
So how would you describe cyclical living then?
Yeah, I think it's getting in tune with your own guideline. I just love this idea that you open a package and there is this paper you can open, you know? And we're so used to having that when we buy a machine, but we're not kind of like realizing that every person has a different guideline and we are so used to compare or to do the things our parents did, or you know, we are so automatically do these kind of things instead of like realizing what is my guideline actually and how it maybe is also changing over the years, you know. Like last week I had a woman, a high achiever also, who became a mother, and she entered in the intake when her child was already 9 or 10 months old, and she's really struggling with the very fact that she was always the best in her job, and now she has to she's a mother, and she had a lot of physical problems after the pregnancy, and I was like, all right, but like how was it for you to become a mother? And she was just like flabbergasted by the question. She was so hard trying to do the things as she did before. And we are so not aware of anything that changes, maybe our cyclical changes in the month and how to adjust to those, but also our cyclical changes in our life, from a girl into womanhood, from womanhood into motherhood, from motherhood into the wise woman, without putting too much pressure on the word, because I want to invite everyone to use the word like mother or wise woman in the way that fits to you. But how can we also appreciate these changes in our life and into our month? And that really needs to get to know yourself. Because I realized the last year, every time day 21 ish in my cycle, I have sometimes a hard day. So my menstruation is already in my Outlook calendar, but now I put also day 21 into my Outlook calendar to just check in. But maybe it's for your day 14, you know, if we come back to cyclical living in the month, you know. But get aware of your signs and your signals because they're different for everyone.
I love that. And again, it comes down to data collection. We're never taught to collect data on ourselves. We're fed data from other people, other resources, the averages.
Mm.
And these things do bind us together, but also we have to focus on what is individual, what our gut tells us, what is right for us, and bring that focus in a way that's not selfish back to ourselves. It's essential to understand
Mm.
ourselves because nobody else can do that.
Yeah.
So so how do you help women, or what helps women reconnect with the intelligence then of their sort of nervous system and their being?
Hmm. So, what really helps? So one thing, and that is well known, what I already mentioned, is just to put your things in your calendar, you know. But That's the first step I always say to clients if they come in for hormonal balance, to start to track. And you don't need to track everything, every little detail. Just track the things that are like in a positive or a negative way, very specific, like the things you really notice that day, you know? But that asked for a little check-in moment. Is that in the morning or just before you're gonna sleep? Both fine. That's for the cyclical living. If you want to go and get to know our nervous system, I think it's really we really have to get in touch, and that works mostly really well with more like practices. And you know, it's not only breathing exercises or meditations. It can also be a bath or a massage, but all kinds of felt experiences to really feel how the body can feel. I lately had a client who started for the first time in her life with breathing exercises. And she was like, yeah, I really feel different during. Like it's just 5 minutes she was doing, you know? 2 minutes rule, we say. Just start 2 minutes. And if you want to continue, you do longer for any kind of new habit. And then to have this felt experience that although she's not feeling better yet outside this breathing exercise, that's okay. But in the breathing exercise, she sense this change, and to really yeah, go into the landscape of your nervous system. You know, if you would have a map, we love to have a map of a city, then we know where to go. But let's make a visual map, like not per se to write it down, but just, you know, like as a metaphor of our nervous system. What does it do when it gets what kind of information? Because in the end, it's all about information. Do I get information from a Netflix series where 95% of the time unconscious activity in my head is still going on? Or do I give information to myself of breathing exercise? I don't judge, but it's just different. What does happen with this information?
And that permission to pause and find out how we are feeling, to stop and check in with ourselves. I know that's something I experienced with the breath work, for example. When do you get an hour where you're lying down and relaxing and not having any other stimulation like music or Netflix and just focusing on yourself? It's something we need help doing, I think, a lot of the time because it's so alien to us. You described the Connected Health Weekend as this mix between beta and alpha scientists, so medical doctors alongside coaches, alongside lived experience, alongside breath work. Where do you sit between those worlds?
Oh, everywhere?
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
So time is really flying by. It
Right.
always happens in these conversations. I look at the time and then think, oh my gosh, so many more questions I want to ask you. So, um, what are you doing now in your life? Because as I said, I'm digging into what you're doing, and I know that's far more than work. So I'm really just wanted to hear a little bit about this.
Yes. So we are in times of change. My partner and me, we hope to leave after Christmas or beginning of January with our camper. We bought the camper the weekend after Womanship. And since then, we have been all of my free time has been for the camper and all the preparations that have to be done. I will continue working for the upcoming 12 months, but it will be remotely. It's not a big change for me because like 95% of my clients are already remote anyways. The route is not defined yet. We will drive to the south, Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and we will see what will come next.
I love that. Again, the curiosity coming through and the fact that you can practice what you're doing and explore what's around you as well. I think that's just so exciting to show people these possibilities exist. We don't have to be bound by our four walls. So
Mm.
There is so much more that I want to ask you and dig into, but time just doesn't allow it. I just wanted to flag a few things. At the Connected Health Weekend, Dr. Rianne ran a really amazing session called Rooted in Rhythm: How Your Nervous System Dances with Cycles and Seasons. And she's going to be doing the rerun of that digitally online for all those who missed it on the 27th of January. We're still going to set the time, so take a look for that. And she's also part of our 31 Days of Giving. She's offering a 60-minute hormonal insight session. So, this is a deeply personalized exploration of your cycle, your story, your nervous system patterns, and the signs of what your body has been trying to tell you. That will be coming up in the coming days. Check out all the 31 Days of Giving. We're giving away amazing prizes from our health and wellness professionals, all to help you give yourself a better and a deeper kind of self care. So thank you so much for being with us. I've really appreciated the fact that you've been so open and vulnerable in sharing your story and what's brought you to become the amazing professional that you are today. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nicolette, for your time and your beautiful questions.